We hope that you've been able to get outside during this time of year and enjoy some of the winter activities that are happening around the Ottawa area. Here at the Outdoor Education Centres, winter is one of our favorite times of year. During this video, we're going to explore something that's all around us. That's right, snow. Now, you might be enjoying the snow for a variety of winter activities: skiing or snowshoeing, tobogganing, maybe even building forts or animal tracking. But what do you actually know about snow and how it's made? Over the next few videos, we're going to look at the different properties of snow and how it's used by animals and humans. I encourage you to do some brainstorming in your class about what you already know about snow. Today we're going to focus on how snowflakes are made and what they look like up close.
They say that no two snowflake ever looks the same. And you know what? It's 100% true. And a lot of that has to do with how snowflakes are formed. And so normally they kind of start off all looking the same. And then as they fall down through the sky, they interact with areas with different temperatures, different humidities. And because of that, they form into completely unique and different shapes. Now, the word humidity might be something new for you, but basically what it just means is the amount of water that is available in the sky for those kind of snowflakes to latch onto and form new ice. And so when you think of a snowflake, though, what do you see in your head? The odds are very good that you're probably thinking of that kind of classic six-sided, kind of like a star-like shape. And it's very much the snowflake that we all think about. But did you know that snowflakes come in a whole wide variety of shapes and sizes? Some scientists even say that there's over 100 different types of snowflakes that they've classified. And so there's lots of variety out there, but we can typically break them down into two different groups. And so we can look at this really awesome diagram that was designed by a group of scientists out in Japan, and they figured out, as we kind of move along, we have two main kind of groups of sizes. So we have like the plates, which can kind of form into those classic star-like snowflakes, but we also have kind of these column-like ones that form in long columns or kind of like needles. And we kind of alternate between these depending on the temperatures that we see here on our diagram. And depending on the amount of humidity in the air, that really kind of defines how big our snowflakes can get. And so if we have a lot of humidity, we can get a gigantic snowflake. Though typically, you're not going to get anything bigger than the size of like a penny. And so I think one of the really cool things about snowflakes is that because everyone is unique, they each tell a very unique story on how they were formed. And so as our snowflake is forming around this little bit of dust up in the sky, it might fall through an area that has a really large amount of water in the sky, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, kind of form out as a nice big plate, and then we get our classic snowflake. But sometimes they form in areas that are really, really cold, and they're not going to have a lot of water available to them. And they're going to form really small, either really small plates or needles, and that's often what we call kind of like diamond dust. When it gets really cold out and the sky starts to shimmer, that's what we're looking at. But I think one of my absolute favorite types of snowflakes is this one over here. We often call this a capped column. And as it was forming, it was probably around, -4 to -10, and started to form that really nice column in the middle there. But then as it got kind of falling down, it might have got blown over to an area that's a little bit colder, and it started to start to form those plates on the end. And so you can kind of see that, as it's falling, it can be in one area, then go to another, maybe then to another, and you can get a whole variety of shapes and sizes. And so as we move on to our next activity that we're going to get into, I kind of challenge you to get out there and look at different snowflakes and try to see if you can figure out how they might have formed, what kind of conditions they might have fallen through before they got into our hands or onto our tongues or onto our pieces of paper to look at.
Now that we've learned more about snow and how it's formed, let's take a closer look at each individual snowflake. For this activity, you're going to head outside, so you need to make sure that you have warm clothing and access to snow. And you also want to bring with you a black piece of paper. That way the snowflake will show up on it. I'm also going to bring with me a hand lens, which will allow me to see greater details of the snowflake, and my cell phone, which I'm going to take pictures with. If you don't have access to either of these, that's fine. You can still explore each snowflake without them. The first thing you're going to do when you get outside is make sure that your paper is nice and chilled. So you either want to hold it in the cold air for several minutes, or you want to, before you leave, stick it in the freezer so that it's nice and chilled so the snowflakes don't melt on it. All you're going to do with your piece of black paper is scoop up some snow, and you want to get as little snow as possible because remember, we're trying to just look at the individual flakes. Scoop up a little bit of snow, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of move my paper around to separate all the flakes or the pieces of snowflakes. And once I've separated them enough, I'm actually going to take my hand lens at this point and I'm going to hold it over one open eye, and it's going to be about an inch from my eye, and I'm going to move my paper closer to it until they are focused and nice and large, and this way I can start to see all the little details of these snowflakes. I want to make sure that I don't bring the paper too close to me because my breath might melt those snowflakes. I also want to make sure that if it were a bit warmer of a day and I had my mittens off or my gloves off, that I wasn't touching the snowflakes or melting them with my hands. You're going to want to choose several different locations to collect some snow from, to examine, and you want to look and record as many details as possible, all right? I'm going to be heading inside to actually do some recording in my journal of these snowflakes and putting in all those details. One way that I'm going to do that today is by using my phone to take a picture. You may not have access to a phone, and it may be warm enough for you that you can bring your journal outside and draw a picture of the snowflake outside and record those details outside. Or you may not be recording anything. You may just be going around to different locations and looking closely at the details of all the different snowflakes. You want to be looking for locations that are out in the open and some that are where tree cover is in the forest. You also want to look for snow that's maybe been trampled on, and you also want to look at fresh snow that hasn't been trampled on. So these are different types of snow that you want to look to compare and contrast, so look for the similarities and differences between the snowflakes. Let's head inside and take a closer look and do some journaling.
Now that I've collected and observed several different snowflakes from different locations, I'm going to pick one to share with you in my journal. So the first thing I always want to start with is the date and the weather. And then I'm just going to move into drawing a larger version of my snowflakes so we can actually see those details. Just drawing the skeleton of it, so looking at how many sides it has and adding that many lines. And then looking closely at the details. So I notice that there are, it's a bit thicker in the center, so I'm just going to add a bit of texture there. And it looks like there are these V shapes closer to the tip on each of the sides. And so I'm going to add those in. And then any other details that you notice, just add. It looks like there are these chunks or pieces of other snow crystals that are attached, sort of hanging off the edge of this one. So I'm going to add that in. And I also can use words and numbers. So I'm going to use my I notice statement, and I notice it has 6 sides. I can show the actual size of the snowflake as well, where I collected it from, and label anything on my snowflake that I think would be helpful. So I chose to put the fuzz or fuzzy instead of drawing it all in. and also show at the top. It sort of looks like an arrow there. Once you have all those details recorded, you can take your snow crystal field guide and compare your picture with the others to determine where it fits in. So mine looks like here that it's the star shaped, and maybe it has some of those needles and columns that are attached to it.
Scientists look for patterns in nature to understand more about what is going on. So take some time to study these snowflakes and try and determine what type of snowflake they are. You may even start to notice patterns in the types of snowflakes and where you're finding them. Once you've had a chance to get out and explore in the snow and maybe add some of those to your journal, feel free to share with us any of the pictures of your journals that you have. We would be so excited to feature them on our next snow video. Be sure to check out below a link to our email and different resources that can help you along with exploring snow. Look forward to seeing you next time.